Q and Review, celebrating 40 years of audio production, welcomes you to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast, recorded from our studio in the Bishopbriggs Media Centre and by our volunteers working from home. Keep up to date with Q and Review news via our Facebook, X, formerly known as Twitter, or Instagram at Q and Review. That's @CUEANDREVIEW, or get in touch with us directly by emailing information@qandreview.com. That's INFORMATION @CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling us on 0141 772 3979. Please like and share our podcast and give us constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, June 4. Derek Adams back at Morecambe. Report by Ewan Payton. Derek Adams has made another shock return to a former club. This time it's Morecambe. The highly experienced coach infamously rejoined Ross County for a third stint in charge of the Staggies last season in November. He left Morecambe to take over in the Highlands. However, Adams lasted just 79 days after an ill-fated spell in Linglog, as he quit with the club badly struggling in the Scottish Premiership. He created controversy by claiming the club he'd left, Morecambe, were 100 times better than County, as he blasted the standard of Scotland's top flight following a last-gasp home defeat to Dundee. He branded the quality of the league as shocking. Don Cowie took over in an interim role and guided the club to safety with a comfortable 6-1 victory over Wraith Rovers in the playoff final. Now Adams is back in management, just a few months on from leaving County, and he's back in familiar soundings. The 48-year-old said, "I'm looking forward to it. Morecambe is a club I know well from my previous 2 spells at it, and I'm looking forward to getting started. There is a lot of work to be done over the transfer window to get ready for the start of the new season, and I know the board of directors were looking for a manager who knows the football club and how it works. I am delighted to come back and try and help the football club move forward again. This will come not only through myself, my staff and the players, but the supporters of the football club as well, who have been through a really difficult period. Morecambe are in the League 2 in England." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 4. Rugby. Nigel Carolan on Glasgow's attacking DNA. Report by Graham McPherson. With bonus points removed from the equation as knockout rugby gets underway this weekend, Glasgow Warriors can afford to shift their mindset from one that demands that every attacking penalty means line out, maul, try. But will we see them kick for the post more often against the Stormers in the United Rugby Championship URC quarter-final? "I wouldn't bet on it unless it's a gimme," reveals Nigel Carolan. And given he's Warriors attack coach, he's a man that often has a say in such matters. Attacking rugby has been in the Glasgow DNA for as long as anyone can remember, a philosophy reinforced when Franco Smith was welcomed on board as head coach 2 summers ago. There may be occasions on Saturday night when the pragmatic thing would be to keep the scoreboard ticking over by taking 3 points, but don't expect to see it happening too often, if at all. It's not just that Glasgow are greedy, it's more that the confidence that courses through them, even after the wobbles of recent weeks, means that the players will always back themselves to get over the try line, regardless of the occasion or opposition. Stormers' record in this competition is hugely impressive. Winners in 2022, runners-up last year, but Glasgow bowed to nobody. Expect it to be business as usual at the weekend. Confirms Carolan. I think it's important that we don't go away from what has got us here. We've got to be true to ourselves. We certainly do not want to go into our shells and feel that we've got to be a lot more conservative. We do want to transfer pressure onto the opposition, and playing in the right areas of the field is massive in knockout rugby. So we do speak about that, but we can include that as part of our DNA. A lot of these calls we try to leave to the players. If it's an easy 3 points, we'll take it, but it's up to them. If it's just outside the 15-metre lines, whether they go to the corner and back our maul, a lot of those decisions rest with the players. Given their visitors are likely to arrive in Scotland with a similar attitude, it ought to make for an open and entertaining contest. A key figure in Stormers' success is often Manny Libok, the Springbok fly half, who will look to leave his mark all over the Scotstoun pitch. Warriors, though, are ready for him. Adds Carolan. Stormers are an extremely physical team, but they've also got a massive X factor and one of the best 10s in the business in Manny Libok. I think if you can quieten him and get him off his game, they don't function as well. It's going to be important we make our presence felt in Scotstoun, make sure there's plenty heat on him on both sides of the ball. He's a magician, and if you can take some of that flair and magic away, you can make them ordinary enough. We've got a few guys in our own squad here who were talking about it this morning and how they can make his life a little bit more uncomfortable. Good news for Warriors comes in the shape of the latest injury bulletin that reveals that the treatment room is finally emptying after a season littered with long-term casualties. The hand infection sustained by Stafford McDowell looks like keeping him out of Saturday's match, while Sion Valanu and JP du Breeze continue in recovery. Beyond that, though, Smith will have a full squad to select from. Confirmed Carolan. Kyle Steen is back in training and George Turner is back as well, so it's good to have those guys putting their hand up for selection. Max Williamson has passed all his head injury assessment stuff, so he is back training as well. We're not far off having a full deck again, now that we have guys like Richie Gray, George Turner, Hugh Jones, and all those guys who were long-term injuries back with us. It just adds to the competition we have in the squad, and the challenge is to build them back into the team without losing cohesion. Several players will likely be making their final Scotstoun appearances on Saturday, including Turner, who is set to move to Kobe Steelers in Japan this summer. That's a blow for both Glasgow and possibly Scotland, but Smith opted for a different slant. Said the head coach, "I would put a positive spin on it. I know he's going to go for a year, and then we'll see. You never know, maybe he comes back in a year or two. But in the meantime, if I was Gregor Townsend, I would see this as an opportunity to see some other guys putting their hands up for responsibility." Report by Graham McPherson. Evening Times Sport, June 4. Highly rated prospect joins Rangers. Report by Ewan Payton. Rangers are set to sign highly rated Hearts Academy prospect Alfie Hutchison. The 15-year-old forward has decided to join the Ibrox club from the Jambos. Hearts Standard says he will move along the M8 to join the academy of Philippe Clement's club. The teenager is viewed as one of the top talents in Scotland, and he has attracted plenty of interest from teams in the English Premier League. The Tynecastle outfit will be due a compensation payment from the Scottish Premiership rivals due to Hutchison's age. He has impressed while playing for Scotland's under-16s, scoring against both Italy and Portugal in recent times. Evening Times Sport, June 5. Clark ramps up shooting practice. Report by Graham McGarry. The Scotland players will be getting their shooting boots on in training this week, ahead of their final warm-up game for the European Championships, as manager Steve Clarke tries to resolve a lack of confidence in their finishing. The Scots passed up a host of opportunities before eventually beating Minnows at Gibraltar 2-0 in Faro on Monday night, the third game in succession where they have created numerous openings but failed to convert them at anything like an acceptable rate for Clarke's liking. The national team head coach understands that his men are a little nervy as the Euro approaches, but he will be laying on shooting sessions for his players this week as he attempts to get them back into the scoring habit. Said Clarke, I think it comes down a little bit to confidence. People are searching for confidence. Lawrence Shankland did not really have any clear-cut chances where you are thinking, go on, he's getting there. It's maybe something we need to look at, his positioning especially on set plays, where he was maybe too far out from the centre of goal. There are always things you can look at. What can we do about it? Keep practising in training. They have the biggest tournament coming up for the country next week. They all have half a mind on Germany already. It sounds terrible to say that, but that's just the way it is. It's natural. They want to go on the plane, flying to Germany for the Euros, and they are involved in what's going to be a fantastic tournament in the summer, so you have to make allowances for that. The pitch was really sticky in Faro, and I'm not going to dress it up. We should have passed the ball a little bit better, but it was really sticky. We have been training all week on wet pitches with the ball, and it wasn't a pitch you could dribble on. So lots of chances and a little bit more quality required. Meanwhile, Clarke says he will tell the unlucky players who will be cut from his original 28-man provisional squad before Friday night's game against Finland at Hampden. Lyndon Dykes has already withdrawn from that original list through injury, with Clarke calling up Bristol City striker Tommy Conway from the Scotland under-21 squad to replenish his attacking options after Ben Doak was also ruled out yesterday. Whoever it is that still has to be told, they have not made it into the plane that leaves for Germany on Sunday. Clarke is not looking forward to that conversation. And he said, it's quite a tricky one to be honest, because you can put the team in at midnight on Friday. You could tell someone on Thursday they are not going, and then we pick up an injury on the Friday, and you have to give them a cuddle and say, I love you, you're going. It's strange that they make us do it like this, but we will find a way. I will be speaking to the players concerned. They are not going to be in the 26 before the Friday game. Clarke admits that his players were perhaps a little tentative against Gibraltar on Monday evening, given what happened to Dykes, with nobody wanting to pick up an injury so close to the tournament. And he said, people won't think of that. They just think of the excitement. But until you're actually on the plane and on the way to Germany, there is always a doubt in the back of your mind. Probably what happened with Lyndon on the training pitch the other day spooked them a little bit as well. You have to understand, they are human. They have emotions like everybody else. The Scotland manager is hoping, though, that his players will let loose a little at the National Stadium against Finland, so that they get a proper send-off from the Tartan army. And he continued, "That is what we are after, a good performance at home in front of our supporters, to give that a little boost before we go to the tournament. That's what we aim to do on Friday. We will assess who played against Gibraltar, the minutes they got, whether they feel they need a few more minutes, but it will be a little bit closer to a more familiar Scotland team under my tutelage." Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, June 5. Clark reaction to Euro's mistake. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Some managers absolutely slaughter their players when they have made a mistake, but that is not how Scotland boss Steve Clarke tends to operate. That's the opinion of 26 times capped international Stephen O'Donnell. The experienced fullback was a mainstay in Clarke's side that appeared at Euro 2020, and he has lifted the lid on what the gaffer is really like behind the scenes by recalling his shock reaction to a horrific error during a clash against the Czech Republic 3 years ago. The Motherwell defender told Clyde One's Scotland's Euro Stories podcast, "I think he does keep his cards close to his chest. I think he will occasionally show signs of, I'll say weakness, but signs of love or signs of passion or care. But the majority of the time, he's calm." Like the Czech Republic game in the Euros, I took the touch out the park, and obviously I didn't mean it. A lot of managers would be like, "That's hopeless, you're brutal," and all that. We had a bit of a heckle from the crowd, and obviously it's not nice when you've made a mistake. I think it was goalless at the time, quite early on, and I was nervous, a bit more nervous maybe than normal. And I'm running past Clarke and he just goes, "Try and not do that again," and smiled. It instantly just changes you. That would be how I would describe him. He knew when to come for you, and he knew when to just essentially put an arm around you, and I think that's what makes him a great manager. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, June 5. Forrest not taking Scotland call-up for granted. Report by Robbie Hanratty. James Forrest is desperate to make Steve Clarke's final 26-man Scotland squad for Euro 2024, but he is not taking his spot on the plane to Germany for granted. The Celtic winger enjoyed a resurgent end to the 23-24 campaign as he helped the Hoops win a domestic double. He scored 5 times from his final 10 games, which earned him a long-awaited recall to the Scotland squad. It could not have come at a better time for the veteran winger, with the Euros on the horizon. He started in Monday's 2-0 friendly win over Gibraltar and displayed glimpses of what he can offer the Scotland team, who will head into the tournament without several key players, including Lyndon Dykes. And he admitted, "It's down to the manager. Myself and a few others. You just need to come away and enjoy it, give your best, and I think that's all you can do. Then it's up to the manager. I have not been in a camp for 3 years, and I am getting a bit older as well, but I have really enjoyed my football for the last couple of months and was delighted to get the call-up and get another game for Scotland. I am just going to enjoy every day that I am here. Every Scottish player wants to go and be a part of it, and obviously I am the same. Even though you are getting older, you still want to work hard and play for your national team as much as you can. As a professional player, you want to play in the biggest games possible. You want to play in big stadiums against the best players, and I have managed to do that all my career. I am going to enjoy the next few days, and when the manager makes his decision, I will get on with it. Forrest might have been excluded from the international setup during the past 3 years, yet he claims there's been a familiar feel since he arrived back in the camp, and he continued, "Maybe Angus Gunn was the only player I didn't know. After the first day, honestly, it felt as though I hadn't been away. I've known loads of the boys for years, and it's a really tight group. It just felt normal, and it was good to get back training and playing. I have really enjoyed the first few days back in training and meeting up with the boys again. And obviously, I was delighted to play and start and be back involved." Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, June 5. Manchester City launch legal challenge to Premier League rules. Report by Press Association. A legal challenge by Manchester City against Premier League rules will be heard next week, according to reports. The Times reports an arbitration hearing will start on Monday over a claim made by Premier League champions City against the Top Flight's Associated Party Transaction (APT) regulations. The APTs are designed to ensure that all deals between a club and entities linked to that club's owners are done at a fair market value. The Times reports that a 165-page claim was issued by lawyers representing City. If the action is successful, the Times says it could assist City in the defence of their case against 115 Premier League charges laid in February 2023, because some of the charges relate to alleged attempts to disguise owner funding as sponsorship in breach of league rules. City deny any wrongdoing. The Premier League declined to comment on the matter. Manchester City did not respond to a request for comment when contacted. The PA understands clubs were told at a league shareholders meeting in February about a threat of legal action by one club, at the time reported to be City, against the APTs. That did not stop a majority of clubs voting to strengthen those rules at that meeting. The Times reports that the other 19 Premier League clubs have been asked to join it in defence of its case against City. According to the Times article, City's lawyers argue the club are the victims of discrimination against golf ownership, and that the rules make them subject to a tyranny of the majority. City are owned by Sheikh Mansour, the Deputy Prime Minister of the United Arab Emirates. Report by the Press Association. Evening Times Sport, June 6. Champion cyclist pulls out of major tournament after being hit by car. Report by Jodie Harrison. A champion Scots cyclist has been forced to pull out of the Tour of Britain after she said she was struck by a 4x4 and verbally abused by the driver. Kate Richardson, a road and track cyclist from Glasgow, said she was hit at high speed by a car while training, suffering a broken collarbone after it had just healed following an injury earlier this year. The 21-year-old said she also has severe bruising across her right hip and road rash, a term used for friction wounds caused when cyclists crash and skid on a road. In a social media post, Richardson said the crash was incredibly hard to accept and just should never have happened. She wrote on Instagram, "I was on a narrow single-track road, no more than 3 meters wide, on a blind bend, and clearly the driver could not wait 10 more seconds to overtake me. He decided to try and squeeze his huge 4x4 past me at a high speed, hitting me hard and knocking me off my bike. Initially he just drove on, but turned around and came back later to verbally abuse and threaten me, before getting back into his car and driving off again." Richardson said another driver came across her and helped her up and gave her a lift home. However, due to the crash, she will miss this year's Tour of Britain, which is taking place from today to June 9. She wrote, "This is a lot more than just a physical injury. It was incredibly scary, and I count myself lucky that I walked away relatively unscathed compared to what it could have been. Mentally, though, it will take a while to overcome, knowing that once again I'll be missing a key racing block, whilst knowing what sort of shape I worked so hard to be in is hugely disappointing and hard to get my head around." After winning the recent Rafa Lincoln Grand Prix, Richardson was looking ahead to this week's Tour of Britain. She has enjoyed a decorated early career, including national and junior European championships. In response, Paralympian Dame Sarah Storey said, "Utterly dreadful news, hoping Kate makes a speedy recover, and after the physical injuries have healed, she can manage the psychological impact." Police were made aware of the incident, which is said to have happened in Yorkshire. Report by Jodie Harrison. Evening Times Sport, June 6. Graham McGarry asks, "Why is everyone so dour about Scotland ahead of the Euros?" It's always the same. Just look at our reaction when we have a spell of nice weather. In the first couple of days, we rejoice in the taps off temperature. By day 3 or 4, people are saying things like, "They like it hot, but not this hot," or "We could be doing with some rain to clear the air." Well, enough. Why can't we just enjoy nice things when they briefly puncture what can largely be, let's be honest, a pretty grey existence here in our little corner of the world? The same can be said for our attitudes towards the Scotland national team. For years, decades in fact, we weathered misery and disappointment at every turn. Qualifying for a major tournament was as fanciful a notion as a Weetabix-headed celebrity of Scottish descent, no, not the beloved Archie Macpherson, becoming the leader of the free world. But remarkably, both of these things eventually happened. Remember 2016, when the rest of the home nations qualified for the Euros and gloried in asking us to put their bins out while they partied in France. The best we could hope for was living vicariously through whichever country was playing England and rejoicing when the enemy mercifully fell short. Enter Steve Clarke. Not only did the Scotland manager take us to our first major tournament in over 2 decades, he backed it up by qualifying for another this summer. Granted, In between times we had the sheen rather taken off the last Euros by COVID and some disappointing results once there, and a near miss in the playoffs for the World Cup against Ukraine. But think about where we came from. Bertie Votes, Boozegate, Craig Levine, and the 4-6-0. Chris Iweluma's miss against Norway. Sorry, big man. Harry Kane's last gasp equaliser at Hampden. Kazakhstan, and any number of other calamities you care to mention that littered the 20-odd years that came before Clark. Now here we are, standing on the verge of a major tournament with one of the most talented groups of players we have assembled in a generation or two. A proper tournament too, no COVID restrictions, hosted in one of the world's great footballing nations. What's more, we are playing in the first game, the opening match of Euro 2024 against host Germany, in the Allianz Arena, with the eyes of the world upon us. And what are we doing? Moaning. Of course we are. I should say here that while I recognise being pessimistic is something of a national pastime, a great many fans are indeed excited about what is to come in Germany. But it just feels as though the build-up to this Euros has been dampened somewhat by an outbreak of dourness across the land. Injuries have played a part in that. We'll go to the tournament without Aaron Hickey, Nathan Patterson, Lewis Ferguson, Jacob Brown, Lyndon Dykes and Ben Doak. But out of those players, despite Dykes being an integral member of the squad, only Aaron Hickey would have been guaranteed to start against the Germans. So let's not allow those withdrawals, as heartbreaking as they are for the individuals involved, to create a narrative that we are turning up to a gunfight with a water pistol. The depth of the squad has been affected, yes, but we'll still be fielding a team packed with accomplished, experienced, top-level players across our 3 fixtures. There has never been a better chance for Scotland to finally get the monkey off our backs of never having progressed past a group stage of a major tournament. One win could get us there. Recent form has been a bit of a buzzkill, I will concede. The wisdom of taking on friendlies against the likes of the Netherlands and France was questioned at the time, and the subsequent thumpings were disappointing, but explainable. It was something of a second string that took on a full-strength French side in Paris, just days after the players had been allowed to celebrate their qualification to the Euros with more than a few cervezas after a great display in a narrow defeat to Spain. And in Amsterdam, a much stronger-looking Scotland side were the better team against the Dutch for 70 minutes before a raft of substitutions saw the roof caving in. Even the poor defeat to Northern Ireland saw Scotland have over 80% possession against a team who got up the park once and, to their credit, made it count. It was similar in many ways to the win over Gibraltar on Monday, except they didn't really get up the park at all. Scotland missed a host of chances in that game, but got the win, while Clark tried out a different formation and got minutes into the legs of his players. It was a training exercise in all but name, but still for many, it was a portent of doom for what lies ahead in Germany. Jeez, oh. If we lose to Finland and perform poorly at Hampden on Friday night, with what will be closer to the team and setup that starts in Munich, maybe then I'll be a little concerned. But I think Clark and his players have earned a little more trust from the nation than many are giving them, and they certainly deserve a raucous send-off as they look to go out there and make their country proud. I am not going quite full Ally MacLeod and saying we can win the whole thing, and we all want to progress past the point where simply taking part in these tournaments is no longer enough. But where is the joy in pooh-poohing our chances before we've even clapped eyes on Marienplatz? This might come back to bite me if we do indeed fall flat in Germany. But this doom and gloom is not for me. Call me a blind optimist if you will, but this is only our second tournament since Bewitched were top of the charts with C'est la vie. Tony Blair was Prime Minister, and I barfed up Marydown at the age of 15, just after John Collins had equalised against Brazil. Just like then, forgive me if I enjoy it. This manager and this team are capable of creating history. Let's show them on Friday night at Hampden that we believe they can, and that we believe in them, says Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, June 6. Lewis Morgan drafted into Scotland's squad. Report by Ewan Payton. Lewis Morgan has been called up to the Scotland squad ahead of Euro 2024. Steve Clarke has drafted in the New York Red Bulls forward to bolster his attacking options ahead of the major tournament in Germany. Earlier this week, under-21 international Tommy Conway was called up to replace the injured Lyndon Dykes. But just as that piece of positive news was delivered, word was announced that Liverpool prospect Ben Doak had to withdraw due to an injury. And so former St Mirren and Celtic player 27-year-old Morgan has been called up to replace Doak. The official Scotland national Team X account wrote, Steve Clarke has bolstered his squad with the call-up of Lewis Morgan. Welcome back to the squad. The winger has scored 9 goals in 16 MLS appearances so far this season in the Eastern Conference. He has also notched 3 assists. Meanwhile, as former players go, Paul Lambert is as well placed as any to give a flavour of what the current crop will be feeling in both camps heading into the opening game of the European Championships. The Celtic and Borussia Dortmund legend has played in a similar occasion for his country as part of the Scotland midfield that ran world champions Brazil so close in the opening match of the World Cup in France in 1998. He also knows full well the weight of expectations that the German footballing public will be placing on Die Mannschaft as they go into their home tournament, and he is hoping that the pressure on them will work in the favour of his own national team as they look to pull off an almighty shock in Munich next Friday. It's a brilliant game because Scotland have nothing to lose and nothing to fear, said Lambert. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, June 6. PGA Tour winner McIntyre responds to online critics. Report by Nick Rodger. This funny old game of golf, as Robert McIntyre said with a reflective smile yesterday, throws some things at you. So too does technology. As McIntyre and his manager Ian Stoddart wrestled with the various fixtures and fittings of a laptop in an effort to hook up to a video conference call with the assembled media, the eventual connection of said call should have been accompanied by a gasp of, "Oh boy," that Walter Cronkite spouted when Apollo 11 landed on the bloomin' moon. It's probably easier to win a PGA Tour event than log into a Microsoft Teams meeting after the emotional and triumphant tumult of his breakthrough victory at the RBC Canadian Open on Sunday. McIntyre is back among his ain folk of Oban for a couple of days, and a couple of gentle libations too, to reflect, rejoice, recharge, and refocus with the people who really matter in life. In this game, there's not much time to draw breath. The 27-year-old will have to get his golfing head screwed back on for next week's United States Open at Pinehurst. You've got to savour the successes when they come along, though, especially when you've just made your PGA Tour breakthrough with your dad acting as caddy. What was he saying about golf throwing some things at you? I didn't believe it was going to happen last week, said McIntyre, after a career-changing week, which earned him a 2-year PGA Tour exemption, propelled him up into the world's top 40, and opened more doors than a porter. And he continued, even at the prize giving, the tournament officials were all speaking, and I'm actually laughing out loud because I'm thinking, I'm going to wake up from this dream. But it was real. McIntyre likes to keep it real too. Family come first for a young Scot who remains as down to earth as a muddied shinty stick. His decision to return to Oban for a flying visit was as understandable as it was inevitable, even if some in certain golfing circles have questioned his motives. Blimey, some harumphing online cynics even questioned his sense of ambition. This week, McIntyre could have been playing in Jack Nicklaus's Memorial Tournament, a star-studded signature event with an outrageous prize fund of $20 million. Having played 6 weeks in a row and finished that stint with the giddy and draining high of a victory, the Ryder Cup player was determined to get back to the old haunts of Hame and re-energise himself ahead of next week's third major of the season. It is a process that has served him well throughout his professional career, so who are we to judge? He said, it's been a good 6 weeks, but the mental aspect of that stretch was high, and then winning last week was an even bigger high. If I played the Memorial, the United States Open, and the Travelers' Championship the week after, that's 9 weeks in a row. Not many players play 9 weeks in a row, except probably me, the madman. With everything that was going on, there was no disrespect meant about pulling out of Jack Nicklaus's event. This was all about what was right for me. I just thought it was the right thing to have a week off. It could have been any event. Yes, I get it. The Memorial is an elevated event, and it's $20 million or whatever. But does preparing right for the United States Open not show ambition? It's up to you. The normality of life in his native land has always given McIntyre a sense of perspective. It also gives him fresh purpose for the return to his golfing crusades in far-off pastures. I was never going to have a proper party, he said, to those who assumed he was going to drain the Oban hostelries dry. It was all about getting home to the people who matter. Dad and I have just done something really special. He's had more messages than I have. We'll probably have a family dinner. The whole crew will be there. But we won't be crying this time. The clouds of McIntyre's well-documented struggles with the American way of life have had a silver lining. Orlando will remain a base for business. Oban, though, will forever be the place that gives him most pleasure. And he smiled. Scotland's my home, and I think it's always going to be. After a life-changing week for McIntyre, some things don't change, says Nick Roger. Evening Times Sport, June 7th. Athletics. Erin Wallace in the form of her life. Report by Susan Egglestaff. The expression on Erin Wallace's face when she crossed the line and realised she had not only run the fastest 800 metres of her life, but had also dipped under the Olympic qualifying mark, spoke 1,000 words. Those 2 minutes, or 1 minute 59.20 seconds to be precise, have now set up the coming weeks to be the most significant of the Glaswegian's career. This weekend, Wallace will make her debut at a senior outdoor major championship, having been included in Great Britain's squad for the European Athletics Championships, which begin today in Rome. This European Championships appearance, coupled with this month's British Championships, which double as the Olympic trials, could go a long way to defining not only Wallace's season, but her entire career. It's quite a thought realising the significance of the coming weeks, but the 24-year-old is in exactly the position she had planned for at this stage of her athletics career. The Giffnock North athlete says, "I always hoped I would be fighting for an Olympic spot by this point in my career. In 2021, I was not too far off qualifying for the Tokyo Olympics, and at that point, I was on an upwards trajectory and expected a smooth path, but that's not how sport works. I missed the 2022 season through injury, and last season I was up and down, but now things seem to have clicked." Wallace has long been identified as an athlete with plenty of potential. She is an under-18 and under-23 European medalist, as well as a Commonwealth Youth Games 1500 metres champion. However, her career's path has been far from conventional. A detour into triathlon highlighted her versatility. She represented Team Scotland at the 2018 Commonwealth Games as a triathlete, but having returned to track and field and settled on the 800 metres as her favoured distance, Wallace has established herself as one of the country's best middle-distance runners. She has, however, chosen one of the most competitive distances, in a Great Britain context at least, in which to try for Olympic selection. With Olympic medalist Keely Hodgkinson and fellow Scot Gemma Reekie leading the charge, plus several other British women running world-class 800-metre times, Wallace knows that securing a ticket to Paris for this summer's Olympic Games will be no mean feat. However, Wallace has done half the job already by securing the Olympic qualification time in her third-place finish at the BMC Grand Prix in Manchester last month, and this qualification time means that now she knows a top 2 finish at the British Championships later this month would guarantee her Olympic debut. With such stiff competition within the event, this is far from guaranteed, but Wallace admits the knowledge that Olympic selection is within her grasp is a thrilling prospect. And she says, "Before I had run the Olympic time, I was thinking that it was just ridiculously hard to make the team for Paris. But now, having run the Olympic qualifying time, it takes pressure off, and at the trials anything can happen, so who knows who'll make it to the Olympics. Making it to Paris is definitely on my radar, but all my hopes and dreams are not pinned on it. I'll do everything I can to be there, and I know I need to be firing on all cylinders at the British Championships because it's just so stacked." Wallace's improvement over the past year has been down in large part to becoming a full-time athlete. Having completed her university degree in her home city of Glasgow last year, Wallace relocated to Manchester to join the training group led by esteemed coaches Trevor Painter and Olympian Jenny Meadows, with Wallace now boasting world number 1 Hodgkinson as a training partner. And so, with a solid winter behind her, Wallace has been pleasantly surprised at the consistent performances she's been able to churn out, particularly as a relatively inconsistent few years had sown seeds of doubt that she would ever be able to produce her very best when it really mattered. She says, "This winter, I barely missed any days of training, which for me is mad, because previously I missed loads of training because of niggles and injuries. But this winter, I was able to string a block of good training together, and that means I'm so much stronger and in a much better place to run well. In the past, my performances had been up and down, and I got into a mindset where I knew I could run fast, but thought it maybe just was not going to happen for me in races. So when I got the Olympic qualifier, I was very relieved that I had performed when it mattered." Securing Olympic selection may be Wallace's primary goal for the coming weeks, but over the next few days, her focus will be solely on the European Championships, in which she will compete alongside 4 of her fellow Scots, Eilish McColgan and Megan Keith in the 10,000 metres, and Neil Gourley and Gemma Reekie in the 1,500 metres. Wallace admits making it into this team has been a welcome confidence boost, and while she will be up against Hodgkinson, who is favourite to take 800 metres gold, Wallace's form is allowing her to set her sights high for the coming days. And she says, "I feel so validated to have made this team. It's so good to see the work pay off. I'm highly ranked, but I want to just take each round as it comes in Rome. Making the final would be great though." Report by Susan Egglestaff. Evening Times Sport, June 7. Celtic outcast offered exit route. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Make Nawrocki's time in Scotland has not exactly gone to plan since he penned a 5-year deal at Celtic. The Polish defender cost the Hoops £4.3 million last summer, yet his game time was severely limited, with the 23-year-old appearing just 10 times in all competitions. Cameron Carter-Vickers and Liam Scales were Brendan Rodgers' preferred centre-back pairing throughout the double-winning campaign, while other options such as Stephen Welsh received more minutes when the go-to duo were absent instead of Nawrocki or fellow outcast Gustav Lagerbielke. Despite the lack of opportunities, it is believed that Nawrocki is determined to remain in Glasgow's East End and fight for his future. That's according to TVP sport journalist Sebastian Staszewski, who reports that his former club Legia Warsaw have made efforts to re-sign him this summer. It is claimed Legia's director Jacek Zielinski reached out to the player about a possible move back to Poland, but the player declined the offer because he wants to see where he stands with Celtic during pre-season. The Scottish Premiership champions are set to face Championship teams Ayr United and Queen's Park next month, followed by a pre-season tour in the United States. Rogers' squad will then compete against MLS team DC United and conclude their preparations with high-profile friendlies against Manchester City and Chelsea. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, June 7. SFA chief slams SFA Blazer critics. Report by Graham McGarry. Mike Mulroney has branded critics of the Scottish FA Executive Board as ignorant, as the SFA president defended a motion approved at yesterday's AGM to double their salaries. Members of the SFA board have long been subjected to criticism from fans and politicians for being out of touch with supporters, with slurs such as Blazers being par for the course. Mulroney knew that a move to bring salaries within industry norms would not be a popular one among those critics. He will see his pay packet increase from £25,000 per annum to £50,000, while Vice President Les Gray's remuneration package will jump from £15,000 to £30,000, and non-executive directors Alison McGregor and Malcolm Kipedepo will see their salaries rise to £30,000. The former Alloa Athletic chairman says, though, that the move was not prompted by greed, but by an effort to ensure that they can recruit candidates in the future who are not independently wealthy or retired. Said Mulroney, "It always makes me laugh when people call you a blazer. I'll show you someone who is ignorant of the facts. I don't worry about people who call us blazers, because I know then they have no knowledge of what we do or respect for what we do. It's looking for a cheap headline. It's okay to knock the guys who do the job, but if they did not care about the job, they wouldn't do it. We do it because we think we can move the needle. Believe me, there's not one single person on the SFA board who is doing it for the money." Not one of the clubs represented at the Scottish FA AGM yesterday opposed the move to raise boardroom salaries, with Mulroney believing that the level of remuneration compares favourably to equivalent positions in other sports such as golf and rugby. He also revealed that both he and Gray have deferred their own raises by a year and said, "It is important to stress that the remuneration for non-executive directors and office bearers was assessed and benchmarked independently. The members 100% supported the resolution with no objections. The Vice President and myself will not take it this year, and so it comes in at the point of next year's elections. We need to make sure we can attract the best independent non-executive directors and best candidates. The independent audit came back, and I was not satisfied with where it came back because it was too high. I said we had to cut it below that in the current environment, so we did. It's a very small board. It's a brilliant board. But when we're out there trying to get independent non-executive directors, we need the best. We are the biggest sport. We are the one who's going to change the landscape of the nation's sport. I think I've got the best, but I'll be looking for better. I will never be worried about saying my people are worth it, because they are. And not one single member disagreed. Not one." Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, June 7. Rangers determined to bridge Celtic gap. Report by Robbie Hanratty. The acquisitions of Jefty and Oscar Cortez could be the beginning of a very exciting recruitment drive at Rangers. Jefty moves to Glasgow on a 4-year deal from Fluminense, having spent last season on loan with Cypriot champions Apoel, while Cortez has signed a 1-year loan switch from French side Lens, but Rangers do have an obligation to buy the winger next summer. Manager Philippe Clement is eager to put his own stamp on the light blue squad as he goes into his first summer transfer window in the Ibrox hot seat. Rangers lost the Scottish Premiership title race, which proved a bitter blow, and former captain Barry Ferguson has felt the sheer disappointment around the club. But he reckons the board are going to do all they can to bridge the gap with Celtic, who have secured automatic Champions League qualification, and luring players of similar quality to Mohamed Diamond could prove pivotal in doing that. Ferguson wrote in his Daily Record column, "Having been around the club a lot over the last 12 months, I could sense the level of disappointment all around when the title slipped away over the final few weeks of last season. But I also felt a real determination to do something serious about it. We all know that Celtic are going to hit the jackpot in European football's richest competition next season, but Rangers also have a chance of joining them there through the qualifiers. The obvious fear is that Celtic could disappear over the horizon now that they're about to pile another fortune into the bank. There will be a contingency plan already drawn up for how to go about bridging the financial gap in the event that Rangers have to settle for the Europa League instead. But it would make life a lot easier for all concerned if Clement can find a way of making it through into the big one, and that will be the only aim right now. That's why Bennett will have his work cut out in trying to get the new recruits into the building as quickly as possible, and to his credit, 3 deals have been completed already, with Leon Balogun signing a new 1-year deal, Oscar Cortez penning a new loan with an obligation to buy, and Jefty sorted out. I find it interesting that Jefty and Cortez were identified around the same time as Mohamed Diamond, who has already made a decent impact over his first 6 months in Glasgow. There will be a lot more to come from Diamond next season, and if Cortez and Jefty are of a similar level, then Rangers will have made a very strong start to the recruitment drive. Keeping Balogun at the club was a no-brainer for me. Yes, he may be 35 years old, but he looks to me like the consummate professional. I am delighted he will be sticking around to offer some continuity as Clement rings the changes elsewhere. With 5 players released already, the manager will know exactly how he wants his squad to look when he gets back to Auchenhowie. So while the rest of us can sit back and enjoy Euro 2024 in Germany, Rangers do not have the same luxury. Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, June 7. SPFL announce new 5-year sponsorship deal. Report by Robbie Hanratty. The Scottish Professional Football League have secured a new long-term sponsor. Betting giant William Hill have pledged a 5-year deal to replace car showroom outlet Cinch as the league's main branding. Starting with the 24-25 season, William Hill will become the title sponsor for all 4 SPFL divisions. This agreement also designates William Hill as the official betting partner of the SPFL. That means the divisions will be renamed as the William Hill Premiership, William Hill Championship, William Hill League One, and William Hill League Two. They say that the agreement is record-breaking and claim they will do their best to showcase the 42 SPFL clubs to the highest standard. SPFL Group Chief Executive Neil Doncaster said, "William Hill is a name long associated with Scottish football, and we are enormously excited to have reached a long-term, record-breaking agreement with our new title sponsors. This is tremendous news for our clubs and their fans, for the profile of the league, and for Scottish football in general. In addition to the sponsorship with William Hill, our pioneering gambling harm awareness programme with EPIC will help to educate the communities across the 42 SPFL clubs on gambling harm prevention. Everyone at the SPFL is looking forward to working with William Hill to promote the passion, drama and excitement of the league and its 42 clubs over the next 5 seasons, as well as the rollout of our programme with EPIC. I would also like to place on record our sincere thanks to Cinch for its extremely positive contribution to Scottish football over the past 3 years, and wish them and their management team the very best for the future." William Hill's Marketing Director Michael Sheehan said, "We are delighted to become title sponsor and official betting partner of the SPFL, as well as launching a pioneering gambling harm awareness programme delivered by EPIC. For decades, we at William Hill have loved Scottish football and its fiercely loyal and passionate fans. Now, building on our long-standing association with Scottish football, we are delighted to be playing our part in 5 exciting seasons of the SPFL. In addition to our sponsorship, we will work proactively and extensively to raise awareness of the potential risks associated with betting across the Scottish footballing community. As a business, we place customer safety and responsible gambling at the heart of everything we do, and we are looking forward to delivering an extensive programme across SPFL clubs to educate and promote healthy and safe relationships with betting." Brendan Napier of Scottish Football Marketing spearheaded the hunt for a new SPFL title sponsor. Scottish Football Marketing is a collaborative initiative between the SPFL, the Scottish FA, and the Scottish Women's Premier League, created to serve as a centralised hub for marketing Scottish football assets. On the lucrative new deal, Napier said, "Securing such a well-known marquee brand as William Hill on a record-breaking deal is a tremendous coup for Scottish football and underscores the attractiveness of our national sport for forward-thinking sponsors. It's early days for Scottish football marketing, but today's announcement sets a very welcome standard for future deals and signals that Scotland's national sport is well and truly open for business." Report by Robbie Hanratty. Evening Times Sport, June 10. How Scotland won German hearts and minds. Report by Matthew Lindsay. The Scotland squad arrived at their Euro 2024 training base in the shadow of Zugspitze, the world-famous mountain, which is the highest in Germany at 9,718 feet, last night on a mission to launch a serious assault on the finals and scale new heights in the coming weeks. Garmisch-Partenkirchen, an alpine ski resort in Bavaria, in the far south of the country, just a few miles from the Austrian border, will be home for Steve Clarke's men for much of the next fortnight. It could prove to be the perfect location for Andy Robertson and his compatriots to prepare for the Group A games against Germany in Munich on Friday night, Switzerland in Cologne on Wednesday week, and Hungary in Stuttgart the following Sunday. Sleepy does not begin to describe the picturesque little town. There promise to be no unwelcome distractions as they intensify their preparations for the tournament opener in the Allianz Arena in the coming days, not to mention a lot of love for the visiting celebrities from the residents. That Scotland have chosen to stay in Garmisch-Partenkirchen has not gone unnoticed here. There are signs with a lederhosen-clad resident clinking a frothing pint of Pilsner with a tourist dressed in a kilt, dotted around the streets. Saltires adorn shop windows and restaurant doorways. A delegation of dignitaries staged an official welcome ceremony in the Bayernhall here last night. There was traditional music played by an Oompa band, and the VIP guests were greeted by Mayor Elizabeth Koch before signing their names alongside the celebrated skiers who had raced on the nearby slopes in the Golden Book. Super John McGinn, much to the hilarity of his teammates and delight of the Tartan Army foot soldiers who had turned up, was roped into performing a Bavarian dance with 3 of the musicians. Mercifully, the Aston Villa midfield did not pull his hamstring doing so. Clarke spoke to the assembled throng afterwards and said, "When we came here in January, we thought it would be a special place to have our base camp. And now we see this welcome. It's amazing. You'll be fabulous hosts, and I hope we'll be a fabulous football team." Robertson added, "Thank you for the warm welcome. It's been a long day of travelling, and we'll all be ready for bed. But it's been wonderful to see the local people. The fans will drink a lot of beer. They'll be here in numbers and will enjoy themselves. But Scottish people try to be respectful and will behave themselves. Hopefully they can be celebrating us winning." Judging by the reception they were given last night, Scotland have won a few hearts and minds before a ball has been kicked. They will have the full backing of the locals as well as their fans. Andrew Syme, a Scot who originally hails from Aberdeen, but who has lived in Garmisch-Partenkirchen for the past 30 years and now manages a restaurant, was in attendance with his 2 young children. He was emotional when he saw his heroes arrive, and he said, "I could not believe it when I heard Scotland were coming here. Hoffenheim have stayed here before for pre-season training, when Julian Nagelsmann, the general manager, was in charge. We heard a team may be staying here for Euro 2024. But when somebody told me it was Scotland, I was delighted. It's just fantastic for the town." The mother and father of all thunder and lightning storms flew in from the north in the afternoon, and the event had been delayed and moved to a different venue. It was very much a taste of what was to come for Scotland. The weather forecast for this week is diabolical. However, Clarke, when the rain goes off, will be left alone to perfect his team shape, tweak his tactics, and bolster his charges' morale in this peaceful and idyllic spot. Nothing much happens in Garmisch-Partenkirchen these days, hence the excitement about the arrival of one of the countries competing in Euro 2024, but it certainly has an eventful history. Partenkirchen used to be on the route between Venice and nearby Augsburg. The discovery of America in the early 15th century led to a sharp decline in overland trade, and the area plunged into a centuries-long economic depression. There were frequent epidemics, including several outbreaks of the bubonic plague. Financial hardship and disease resulted in numerous infamous witch hunts, and in the late 16th century, no fewer than 63 people, more than 10% of the population at the time, were either burned at the stake or garroted. Garmisch and Partenkirchen used to be two separate places, but Adolf Hitler forced the two towns, much to the annoyance of the inhabitants, to merge into one in 1935, before the Winter Olympics were held there the following year. It takes just over an hour to drive from Munich to Garmisch-Partenkirchen, and motorists pass through two tunnels which were driven through Vespul Hill at Eschenloh by the Nazis in preparation for the Olympics as they made their way along the B2. The tunnels were close to traffic towards the end of the Second World War and used as underground factories to build parts for the Messerschmitt Me-109 fighters and the Me-262 jet aircraft. The covert operation was named Ente, or Duck. The vicinity has a fascinating history. Scotland will be hoping that they can make some history of their own in the coming days by reaching the knockout rounds of a major tournament for the first time ever. Readers of Scottish tabloid newspapers will be aware that Zugspitze is not the only mountain in the area. No, the Vank also rises to the east of the town. It is a popular hill for hikers, day trippers and paragliders. You can take the Vank Bahn to the summit and pay a visit to the Vank House. A Vank Pass enables you to ride the cable car for an entire year. Scotland will ride the wave of goodwill which their unexpected appearance in Garmisch-Partenkirchen has generated, and will depart for Munich on Thursday with the best wishes of their new fans ringing in their ears, says Matthew Lindsay. Evening Times Sport, June 10. Susan Egglestaff says, "The answer to Stuart Hogg's many problems is not rugby." Whenever the question is about solving a problem in one's private life, the right answer is never ever to make a rash decision to return to a career in professional sport. Yet it seems that no one has advised Stuart Hogg that the best solution to his considerable personal challenges is probably not returning to his past life as a professional rugby player. On the rugby pitch, Hogg is a generational talent. One of the greatest players Scotland has ever produced, he amassed 100 Scotland caps, is this country's all-time leading try scorer, became a British Lion, and has European and English Premiership titles to his name. His retirement last summer, at the age of just 31 and a mere 2 months, before the start of the 2023 World Cup, came as a shock to everyone, with the fullback citing physical issues as to the reason why he was hanging up his boots. At the time, rumours circled that there was perhaps more to his decision to retire so abruptly than his publicised reasons, but who were any of us to suggest that Hogg's own explanation was anything other than the complete truth? After his retirement, however, Hogg's life went into a tailspin. He went from being revered universally by sporting journalists and fans alike for his exploits on the rugby pitch, to being seen in a significantly different manner, with the coverage of him being on the front pages of newspapers rather than the sports section. The first dose of criticism that came Hogg's way was a result of him flaunting, to use tabloid jargon, his new girlfriend on social media just days after his estranged wife, Gillian, had given birth to the pair's fourth child. This was just the start of things, however. Last month, Hogg appeared at Jedburgh Sheriff Court, denying having stalked and abused his former wife for more than 7 years. Hogg pleaded not guilty to acting in an abusive manner, to having caused alarm and fear during a disturbance earlier this year, and failing to comply with an undertaking following his release from police custody. Hogg was released on bail on the condition that he would not contact his estranged wife, and a trial date was set for this July. In addition to these charges, Hogg revealed in April that he had undergone a stint in rehab, which he said helped him reset. And he added, "I was lost, needed help, direction, time away from the spotlight to be able to take a deep breath and think." Since retirement, Hogg has been working regularly as a pundit for TNT Sports, but his myriad of personal issues was a constant shadow over the former Glasgow Warriors man. It was clear that Hogg needed to find a way out of the hole he was digging for himself in his personal life, but no one predicted the solution he was about to come up with. It was widely reported that Hogg will sign for French side Montpellier, bringing to an end his 11-month retirement. It's a move that comes entirely out of the blue, particularly as Montpellier is a team in grave danger of being relegated from the top 14 league. Their fate will be decided later this month, when they face a play-off, but regardless, they are keen to sign Hogg as a medical joker to replace Anthony Bouthier, who suffered an ACL knee injury and is not expected to return to action for some time. There are several risks to Hogg's decision to return to professional rugby. First is whether or not his body is up to the beating top-level rugby players endure week in, week out. And second of all, whether or not he's up to the mental strain that comes with playing top-level sport. It is pretty clear that Hogg's life was not playing out the way he wanted it to following his retirement. In his post-rehab statement, he spoke about his darkest times, saying, "Spending time at a rehabilitation centre allowed me to reset, learn about myself and talk about how I felt without being judged. It's not been easy, but it was the right thing to do. Taking accountability was the first step in the right direction. I accept I have made mistakes and understand why I acted as I did." He was clearly searching for a version of himself that he liked better than this current one. The thing I remain unconvinced about is that returning to rugby is the best thing for Hogg's future and is a route to him healing whatever needs healed. Yes, professional sport fills a void in a way that nothing else can. For Hogg in particular, replacing those feelings he experienced as a player must have been impossible, particularly given the esteem in which he was held. Indeed, the BBC website ran an article about the Hoyt man entitled, how Stuart Hogg became Scotland's first rugby rock star. And certainly Hogg was not the first, and will not be the last athlete to struggle with coming to terms with retirement. It is surely no coincidence that most of his major personal issues have come after he hung up his boots. But of all the cases of athletes who are in trouble, a minuscule number solved their problems by returning to professional sport. It may admittedly be an effective short-term solution. A return to rugby will give Hogg a focus that is generally not required in normal life. But he cannot play rugby forever, and whatever issues have been at the root of his problems will still be there when he retires once again. I wish Hogg well in this comeback, but I cannot shake the feeling that using rugby to solve his problems is unequivocally not the best route to take, says Susan Egglestaff.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Q and Review and to tell your friends about our service